David, welcome to the Owkin Superhuman podcast, and very happy to have you here in Stockholm. Second year in a row.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here for the second time.
Exactly. David, you're a very, very successful entrepreneur and investor in the field of longevity. And today, we wanted to really have your insight on this. What is a good investor in longevity?
That is a great question. I mean, the first thing I think that really comes to mind is what is longevity, right? And I know we can all talk about the common definitions that we think about of living longer, but there's so much that goes into that, which is we got to understand the biology. We got to understand how do we meaningfully measure it? How do we meaningfully engage? And I think the problem that we run into very quickly is what's real and what's hype. Because it's really easy to get people caught up on this notion of, I want to live forever, right? But I think when you're investing in longevity, you shouldn't be investing purely in hype. You should be investing in what's going to actually help people.
So can we go to these categories maybe one by one?
Sure.
So tell me about hype.
Well, I think there's a lot of different ways to look at it, right? So first, this is not hype, right? I think there's a set of things that are just immutables, which are eat well, sleep well, exercise, don't smoke, don't drink, right? Those are 5 things that I think we all know.
Yeah, just what your mother do.
Exactly. Mom was right.
Mom is right.
I don't know if we all want to admit it.
My mom is very cool. She's even like,
If my mother is watching at home. But I think that's where it starts, right? And if you do that, you're getting the first 80%. There's no hype there. The other thing that comes out of it is it's really hard to make money off of that. And I think that's where that just illustrates the slippery slope. Now, there's a bunch of science that goes into this, right? Where there are things that people are understanding and getting real science around where you can have real interventions. And there's very interesting data. And then there's a whole bunch of stuff where we just have no clue and people are just seeing what they can sell. And I think in that middle category is what's really interesting from an investment standpoint, because if you can understand that science and that science can deliver a durable benefit that allows people to understand their health, understand it better, take action, and have a real impact, whether it makes them just live a healthy life for longer or absolutely live longer, both of those are very, very important.
And do you believe in the field of longevity that it will be consumer-based somehow? The people will take care of their own medicine and own future, or it will be still based on physician prescribing things and controlling the field? Yeah.
I think it's got to be a bit of both. Let me give you kind of one of my favorite examples, right? So people talk about metformin as a longevity drug.
Right.
And where does this come from? Well, there's data, really good data, that shows that if you have type 2 diabetes and you take metformin, you will be healthier and you will live longer. Now, the general population has started to take metformin. And despite that, there isn't really data that says if you're healthy and you take metformin, you will live longer. But there isn't really a risk because metformin is so safe in so many people. And so, fine. But does that mean it's really a longevity drug? Let me take this to the next level, which is, okay, if you have cancer and you take a cancer drug, you will live longer. But if you're a healthy person and you take a cancer drug, you're probably going to live shorter. And the reason I make that comparison is the logical step is only the difference of one drug is known to be safe and one drug has a risk profile that's okay for the disease that you have.
But how many years do you need to know that the drug is safe in the real world? I'm taking the example of GLP-1. GLP-1 could be considered as a longevity drug and cutting off cardiovascular death and comorbidities. However, we start to see more and more side effects that were unexpected. I'm not talking about the muscle loss linked to the weight loss, but also like neurological neuropathy. So there is things. So is GLP-1 a real longevity drug if we don't have like 20 years of use ahead of us?
Well, I think it falls into the same category, which is if you have diabetes or you're overweight, it will extend your life.
Right.
Because having liver disease, having heart disease, having dementia are things that cause your life to be lower quality and shorter. And for people who GLP-1s directly help, people with diabetes and obesity, right, it's a great drug.
For sure.
Right? I think the problem happens when you extend it into healthy people. Because what happens if you're a healthy person with a normal body mass index, when you're not overweight? Well, you end up eating less, your muscles shrink, and we've seen pretty clear data.
You gain it, yeah.
Right.
So you're not taking GLP-1 yourself?
I'm not.
Yeah, I think it's a interesting topic. I mean, if there is a sense of taking, we're going to do a very low dose GLP-1s, we're going to prevent, because you talk a lot about prevention in everything you do.
Right.
And so maybe low dose GLP-1 isn't, but what is good prevention? And you've been investing in an amazing company. I'm just quoting Freenome or others, but so what is the right prevention kind of paradigm on longevity?
Well, I think part of the whole framework that we have to think about is you want to be able to predict disease, you want to be able to prevent disease, right? What you need in order to be able to do that are the tools to get there, right? We have to start somewhere. And cancer is probably as good a place as any. You could say neurodegeneration, you could say some others, but there are outstanding companies like Freenome that I think are pioneering a new category of how we can find cancer in the earliest days. Now, the way I think about that whole space, which is generally called liquid biopsies, where you're looking at blood tests or similar to find cancer and precancer, is very simple, right? Which is you want something that's clinically validated. You want something that works in the way that the payer system works, because it's got to be able to get to market in a reasonable way. And you want something where you're aligned with the way that the regulatory bodies want to see something. Now, what does that mean? It means, okay, we want things where there is statistical data that shows that it is actually predictive. That means you need sensitivities and specificities that are very high, right? At the same time, you want to be going after the market cancer by cancer, because that's the way that the regulatory bodies approve it. That's the way the payers approve it. And there are standards, for example, for colon that are basically at the equivalent of the federal level, where if you meet those standards, you're going to get approved and you're going to get reimbursed. And I think what's really exciting about companies like Freenome is they're one of a very, very small number that are actually doing it that way, which when the science and the business come together, you can unlock things that are great for patients and great for society.
In a way, are payers aligned with people that want to live more? In a way that they just want people to live without diseases and a good quality of life, maybe longer, but just die very fast? Is there an alignment there?
Well, I think when you look at longevity, right, I think of like three categories, right? Which is there's the 0 to 85. I think that's really where we're all focused right now, which is can we get ourselves to 85? There's a lot of interventions that you can do, right? Treating heart disease, preventing heart disease, treating cancer, preventing neurodegeneration. That gets you 85. When you get from 85 to about 100, it's sort of genetics. And from 100 and beyond, right now, it's sort of luck. But what's interesting, right, when you look at centenarians, when they die of the same things. They just die really fast. And I think that's kind of what we all sort of want,
I guess.
right?
Exactly.
So if we can get there and then you have that short decay, I think it's probably good for the financial system too, especially if you're taking out the payments along the way.
Right. I fully agree. And look at another big investment kind of topic, which today is wearables. There's huge trends around Oura Rings, Whoop, which are pretty amazing tools. What is the place on these tools towards improving longevity? Is it more between hype and actual? Is it like a reality? What do you think is the importance of this if you had to weight the importance of this type of tools and on the financial side as well?
Well, I mean, we've seen some really interesting market dynamics with these tools, right? There's a lot of excitement because people want to understand what's going on inside their body better. But I tend to call this category sort of minimally invasive, minimally informative. Right?
I love it.
I'm going to admit it, right? I sit here saying that as I wear an Oura Ring, right? But what happens? I go to sleep, I wake up, I feel tired, and it tells me, guess what? You didn't sleep well. And I'm like, thank you. That's useful. But at some level, what's useful about it is it is quantifying how you're not sleeping well.
Exactly.
And that's powerful.
And this will give you some intention to do better. And it's the directionality of it, trying to improve. Maybe it's an example for the rest of your health. And I don't know, maybe kind of prime people to be more interested in that data in general.
Exactly.
Which could be something interesting.
And just taking it quantitative from qualitative is really useful.
So why investors are so, I agree. So what is the investors so into these type of markets? What is the investment thesis around these type of companies?
I think what investors are looking at in those sorts of companies is there's a really strong consumer trend. Because people do want to take better care of their body. People do want to take ownership of their health. And this is fascinating on so many levels, right? Because one, you can go get your Oura, you can go get your Whoop, you can go get whatever the next generation. We invested in a company where we look at it as being minimally invasive, but very informative because it can look at things like glucose and lactate and cortisol and ketones. And these kinds of insights can tell you what's really going on inside your body on a minute-to-minute basis. And that's where I look at it as, hey, Oura, Whoop, others that are opening the category, but this category is going to get enormous.
Enormous. And more network effect as well, because people just speak about it. This is very, very, very interesting. And so now talk about AI in general. Obviously extremely biased with Owkin because I think like AI is important for biology. So what do you think AI is going to be the most helpful for? Biology, chemistry, prediction? Pick up the category where AI going to create for you the most impact. Innovatively.
Yeah, so impact means a lot of different things. If we think about it from a patient and a financial perspective, I think the impact on clinical trials is enormous. Right now, when we talk about developing a drug, we'll sit there from the time of an IND, i.e. when something goes into the clinic for the first time. It's 10 years plus or minus between the time that it gets there to the time that it can actually get out to the broader patient population. It's a long time, right? There's a lot of people who suffer from disease during that period of time. Now, we want to make sure these drugs are developed well, but AI offers this huge ability to transform that. Back when I ran Valo, we had an opportunity to engage with the FDA, and we used AI to fully displace a clinical study. And what I mean by that is we did this large-scale simulation in a way that you could never actually have done the clinical study, and the FDA was comfortable of using that in lieu of a study. And that's really exciting because the FDA wants to figure out ways to make drugs available for patients faster. We're also involved with a company called Hologen AI, which is doing something relatively similar. They're developing what they call super covariates, where the FDA has also shown a willingness to engage. And the idea is to reduce the number of late-stage trials that you ultimately need to do, reduce the size of them.
Yeah.
And if you're cutting years off of that timeline, patients get treated faster, patients get access faster, and that access is so important. We don't want to cut corners on safety, but we do want to get it to patients faster.
I agree. For me, so like AI, I mean, what we do at Owkin is like trying to untap all the medical data towards AI to automatize and parallelize, because if we still the frame of pharma, so like one experiment at a time, one idea at a time, and we need to be able to do 100 at a time. And that's really, really interesting. So what's next for finish the conversation? How do you see human, superhuman living in 100 years? What will they eat? What will they do? Try to push forward. What's your vision on the superhuman of the future?
Well, I think we're at a really, really interesting time right now, right? Where we're getting so much data, so much scientific capability, and the power of AI, where kind of the core capabilities that we need to deliver to live a better, healthier, longer life, they're just shaping up. And when we're able to convene people from different disciplines to start asking difficult questions, but come up with really interesting novel insights, I think we're at a tipping point where we're just going to see massive scale innovation. And what I hope the most is that we're not in an era where there's so much hype that people confuse the hype and the science, and that the science that's going to start emerging, it's already been emerging, but it's going to start emerging at an alarming rate, that can actually start having and delivering the impact that we're all hoping for.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, David.
Well, thank you.
Lovely superhuman. And
you too.
See you next year.
Of course.